What would it take to arouse your life, to experience more connection, more pleasure, more realness, in and outside of the bedroom? I'm August McLaughlin, and this is Girl Boner Radio. Have you ever had a sexual experience that felt super spiritual? Or do you consider sex to be a spiritual thing in general? I recently polled my email list about this, and about 8% of folks who replied said they had had a super spiritual sexual experience at some point. 16% said they generally consider sex to be spiritual. One person wrote, "I had sex with my partner and then saw lights all around them like a rainbow. It didn't feel scary at all. It didn't feel like a health issue. I actually felt peace and full of warmth at a time when I needed some emotional healing." Another wrote, "Sex has always felt spiritual with my wife. There's something about sex with someone you love and who loves you that can make you feel almost like one or out of body, even when your body is feeling so much." And another wrote, "No, it is all physical and emotional for me and sometimes purely physical." All totally valid experiences and perspectives. Today, you'll hear from two sexuality experts about their own spicy experiences that felt super woo-woo, like on another spiritual plane, transcendent. Sex and relationship coach Alicia Davon told me about a time she had sex with her now husband, Erwan, early on. She was in her early 20s at the time, and they had been together for about 6 months.
And we were casually seeing each other, but casual just sounds so weird because our connection was so deep. So it wasn't a casual connection, but the commitment level, let's say, was casual. I was having such profound sexual experiences with him and experimenting. I was just like, I'm going to roll with this, and see how long I want to do this.
She vividly remembers the day that sex turned deliciously woo-woo. At the time, Erwan was running 2 houses of people, about a dozen in each, and they were all engaged in sensuality research and personal growth. Alicia was part of that community when they started dating. She was also in grad school, and her whole life was basically all about personal growth. And some really awesome sex was a part of that. Her especially spiritual romp took place on a Saturday afternoon.
I remember walking into his house. And as usual, there were cool people hanging out in the living room. And then Erwan was standing in the kitchen with oven mitts on and had this big goofy smile on his face. And I'm like, "What are you making?" And he's like, "I'm making brownies," which they could only be pot brownies. Erwan would not bake normal brownies. So I'm like, "Oh, really?" He took the brownies out of the oven and then cut them up and put them away, but got a plate of them. He's like, "All right, let's go upstairs." So I just had this feeling like, this is going to be a wild experience. I just had a feeling. So we went up to his room. We ate some brownies. Back then, you could eat like more than a crumb and not be completely wasted. These were more mellow. I was relaxed. I was used to Erwan and really comfortable with our dynamic, our fun banter. I knew that we would end up making out and having a fun experience. It was always like balmy in his house, kind of warm and felt tropical somehow. He had a lot of plants in his room. So I was just feeling like, chill. We were there in his room. We were listening to music. He was really into the Thievery Corporation back then, which back then was kind of new and cool. So we were listening to these cool electronic beats, and then we started fooling around. It felt really good, whatever we were doing, kissing and making out.
Part of their thing, she said, and something they teach together today, was extended orgasm,
which is clitoral stroking. And Erwan was amazing at stroking my clitoris. It was like every time I was with him, that was such a focus of our sexual time together, and it just took me places. Very high, very expansive, just amazing, the potential I was discovering of my body and the pleasure I could feel. So we did that amidst everything else we were doing, fooling around.
Then she experienced something completely foreign and new.
We were having intercourse and he was on top of me. And I had this experience like I had holes all over my body, and then he had holes and like these little dots or holes or something, and they were matching up. And then all this like energy from his body was spilling into my body. Like we were so connected and permeable and open to each other that he was spilling into me.
She had to say something about it.
Whoa, this is so intense. He's like, yeah, isn't it intense? And it was like he was feeling that, and I was feeling that. And it was this complete union and merging of our bodies and our spirits and our minds and our hearts all at the same time.
As usual, after they had sex, Alicia and Erwan discussed their experience.
He said, what was your favorite part? And I described that experience. He's like, wow, I remember that, except for I felt like your energy was pouring into my body.
Looking back, Alicia thinks a combination of factors were at play that made it all so mystical.
First of all, there was an openness on my end. You know, I happened to be in this very exploratory time, and I don't think that the pot caused this experience. I just don't think so. Most of my incredible sexual experiences have been sober. There was a focus, meaning I wasn't distracted by other things. Like I was very in my body. I was with Erwan. He was with me. I mean, back then we didn't even have smartphones, but like there wasn't any sense of any other time or space besides us. And I think there's a really natural way that when we can drop into our bodies, that's what's there, is sensation and connection.
Alicia said the experience impacted sex for her moving forward, but not in the ways you might think.
One of the next times Erwan and I were together and making out, afterwards he said, what was your favorite part, or what would you enjoy? And I said, well, I didn't feel as much as I felt the other day, because the other day was so amazing. And then he said something like, oh, well, when you compare, you lose. And I'm like, it made me think that often we have these incredibly profound experiences, and then we compare subsequent experiences to that and often come up short. And that's something that as human beings and the way our minds work, we just do. And so after, when I had that subsequent interaction with Erwan, I learned, every experience can really be the best one you've had. Not because you're like climbing a ladder and getting better and something's getting flashier, but more because you can just so feel what's there that it is the best that you've had so far.
Now, Magda's experience. Two of them, actually. Magda Kay is an intimacy expert who specializes in Tantra. Her first extraordinary experience with spiritual sex happened when she was part of a group too.
So I actually lived quite a few years in a tantric community. Well, let's just call it what it was. It was a sex cult.
One that seemed centered on exploring sexuality through polyamory. I think the cult bit is an important part of her story. Fairly often, I hear from folks who were in a sex cult of sorts, or in a cult where sexual things happened, under the guise of spirituality. To be clear, Tantra is a philosophy that's been used in Buddhism and Hinduism for centuries, and many people practice it without being in a cult. But Tantra was mixed into this one.
In Tantra, you consider sex to be a spiritual practice, so we were really, well, let's just say, we were advised a lot to have a lot of sex with a lot of people.
And like most cults, a lot of it seemed awesome at first.
We were all doing these practices that were really opening us up for incredible experiences. So even if you had a short encounter, more of an affair, something that's just like 2 weeks long, or what you could call a hookup, they really felt incredibly deep because of all the practices that we were all doing on opening the heart and moving the energy through the body. I was doing at that time 4 hours of yoga or meditation, breath practice a day. So I would say that was definitely the time in my life where I was most sexual, experimenting the most, doing some crazy things. That was a very vivid time of my life, I would say, sexually.
Her especially spiritual experience involved a lover. They weren't in a proper relationship, she said. They were both seeing other people and they'd gotten busy together maybe a few times.
So it was very casual. I was very attracted to him and he had very intense energy, a lot of fire.
And when they made love, she said, it had been in unusual places.
In a bar and then on his motorcycle.
Interestingly, they were in a conventional sex place, a bed, when she had her coital spiritual awakening. It started with one of his fantasies.
He proposed something that he really wanted to try, which was, I was pretending to be asleep while we make love.
That desire to have sex with an actually sleeping person has a name, by the way, somnophilia. Without consent, that would of course be assault and very harmful and dangerous. In this case, it was role play. So they went for it. Magda laid there very relaxed. The sex started, she's laying there, and then the guy got really, really relaxed.
He was, inside of me, and it was late in the evening. I remember it was dark. And he basically stayed inside of me and fell asleep like that. And then I remember like something extremely intense woke me up. It was like electricity shock in my body. And here I was, he was lying next to me, fully asleep. It's dark, it's the middle of the night. And suddenly my eyes open and I have that feeling that I'm fully awake. And in that moment, I knew exactly what was happening because our Tantra teachers spoke about this. I had just had a Kundalini awakening.
According to Yoga International, Kundalini is believed to be a, quote, powerful primal energy that represents the unmanifested potential within us. So a Kundalini awakening is said to be the waking up of all that dormant energy. And when it happens, people describe this feeling of energy that moves up your spine to the very top of your head.
I remember hearing and reading these stories that when this happens, it's like you're so awake. It's just this incredible amount of energy discharges in your body. And you're just like, you're like plugged into a socket. And it honestly felt like that, like some atomic bomb going off inside of my yoni, inside of me. And I just lied there with my eyes fully open. I remember that. And I just like, oh, wow. I just had a Kundalini awakening, which woke me up. It was so intense. It woke me up, but from inside, from within. And then this energy shot up my spine, and I could really feel that. It wasn't something you would imagine in your mind when you do a visualization. It was so physical. Like I felt that energy go up my body. And I lied there for, I think, like half an hour, fully awake, just noticing what just happened and so amazed because it felt like a true gift.
And it seemed completely on her own. They never discussed it.
To be fair, because we didn't have a relationship, I don't think I would have wanted to share it with him. I felt like it was mine.
So he slept through your awakening after fantasizing about having sex with you asleep.
And in the end, he's the one being asleep where I'm having this incredible experience.
Wow. Magda's second sexual experience that was super spiritual also happened during her time with this community/cult. This time she was in a relationship, an open one.
We were together for about 3 months at that time. And again, because of all the tantric practices we were doing that felt so deep, you really go through so many layers of connecting in that time because you see each other almost every day. You do a lot of tantric practices. There is a whole different level of intimacy. So it was very, very committed and very deep.
And this experience took place during the day.
Again, he came over and we were making love. And honestly, like that part was like any other time. But then we finished and We were embracing upright. So we're not lying down. We're still like kind of sitting and embracing each other. And I looked at him and I honestly saw Shiva in his face.
Shiva is a god in Hinduism. A BBC report describes his role as destroying the universe in order to recreate it. His powers are believed to destroy illusions and imperfections in the world, making way for helpful change. And seeing his face means you're close to him and those powers.
That's what we try to do in Tantra, right? It's about the practice of transfiguration when we want to see the divine in the partner. And I think for me, that was really the first time when I truly did. Like there was no time and no space. That didn't exist. And then, I came back and it's almost like, sometimes when you fall asleep and you're drifting away and then something brings you up, right? Maybe there's like a tick in the physical body in your back and you're fully awake. So that's how it felt. It felt like I snapped out of that state. All of the spiritual practices I've ever done, nothing comes even close to that experience. And I think it's because I had a very deep connection with this guy. We were really cared for each other. And I've worked for that, because I've gone through so much sexual healing and had to open my body. And it didn't feel like I'm hacking it, like I'm using something to get me there faster. It's like, no, I've worked to get there. And I was so happy and proud of myself for feeling that. It honestly felt like I was invited by the whole universe to actually see what it's all about,
These experiences, incredible as they were, did not lead Magda to want to stay in the community. It was more like the opposite.
I had these experiences and then I was having lucid dreams like outside of that. Like we were really practicing few hours a day. I dreaded this practice. I just hated doing it. And at some point I realized that, okay, great, I'm having all of these really deep spiritual experiences, but they don't make me any happier. And I just concluded for myself that, I actually want to be more present in the physical world.
So with gratitude for the good experiences and feeling really off-put by the rest, she left. Wow. And when did you realize that this was a cult?
Probably once I was out.
I think that's common, isn't it? Like you don't go someplace knowing it's a cult.
I mean, I'll say this. I think I realized really to what degree there was definitely certain form of abuse of power. So people that were leading the community, these were men, and definitely a lot of approach to sex was male centric. And I don't think it's fully okay for women. The moment that kind of stuck with me was when I was with the main guru, the main leader of the community. He told me that I should be having more sex with more people. And I said that right now I'm not really attracted to anyone. And he said to me, these are your karmic blockages. And if you don't push through them, nothing will change. And I remember sitting there and thinking, I actually agree. And still, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to engage sexually with someone if I don't want it. Like, I'm not going to go against my body. Maybe there was this kind of tipping point for me to be like, yeah, I think I've had enough.
Goodies for your pleasure toolbox can make sex feel more spiritually significant too. The Pleasure Chest sells books like Urban Tantra by Barbara Carrella, a Tantra feather teaser, and this awesome sea grape massage oil. The oil can be rubbed on during sex or when you're just relaxing, maybe after a bath. It's great for even sensitive skin, and it'll probably leave it super soft. Check these goodies out and more at thepleasurechest.com. Their shipping is always discreet and free for orders over $75. Again, that's The Pleasure Chest at thepleasurechest.com.
Take a second and think back to the sex education you had in school. Did it prepare you to have a healthy and happy relationship with sex and identity? If it was anything like mine, it was stigmatizing, judgmental, and totally unhelpful. But not to worry. The experts are here to offer the sex ed we wish we had. Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. We're a feminist podcast and multimedia platform bringing you all the sex ed you never got through unique and entertaining storytelling, centering LGBTQ and BIPOC experts. We cover an array of sex education topics like abortion, period management, sex and disability, pleasure, reproductive justice, healthy relationships, BDSM, birth control, sex in the media, and so much more. We believe that everyone deserves comprehensive, inclusive, pleasure-centered, medically accurate sex education. Follow along with us as we revolutionize the way we talk about sex, and tune in to Sex Ed with DB wherever you get your podcasts.
If you would like to experience sex that feels spiritual or transcendent, Alicia suggests this.
My advice is kind of in the realm of, what's the word for this? It's not preparation, because that sounds too like planning, but to know that without comparing and reaching for some sensational experience, our bodies are totally capable of feeling incredible pleasure. And if you set the environment up and your own mental state up for that, it's more likely to happen. It's not hard. All that means is like put your phones away, and maybe if you're transitioning from work or something where you're distracted into the sensual experience, take it slow, take it gradually, like give your body time to transition and warm up. You can really just be out of your head and in your body and able to feel so much pleasure. Don't even worry about the voice in your head that's like, well, this isn't as good as this person shared, or this isn't good as my experience with this lover 10 years ago that nobody matches up to. Just say goodbye to your mind and feel your body. And of course, sex skill is also a good thing, right? But the more important part is learning how to just be in your body.
For spiritual sex, no cult required. Consider this from Magda.
The most important thing is to be working on opening your body. And there's so many ways how we can do that. So first of all, any form of physical stretching and mobility is great, because if your body is physically tight, it means that the energy will not be able to move. This is why in yoga, we do all the asanas, right? Which can be really demanding, like a lotus position, which I, for example, cannot do. But all of these positions are there to bring flexibility and open the physical body. So that's level number one. Level number two is, of course, opening the energy body. I personally feel that breath work is the best tool. First of all, breath work is available pretty much anywhere around the world. And there's so many breathing practices that are not spiritual. So if for someone this is a bit like too much, if it's too much for your partner, for example, and it's hard to get your partner on board, I think it's really awesome to get them into breath work. I feel that this offers the most intense releases. And then the third element is to really consciously opening your heart. As long as your energy goes into the heart or higher in your chakras, you're going to have a full body experience.
Chakra is a Sanskrit word that describes energy centers in your body. They're believed to be like spinning wheels of energy that allow life force to flow through you.
But the heart is the most important. If the heart is blocked, then the energy cannot move beyond that. So you have to open the heart to unlock the flow. And how do we do this? Just practice being vulnerable and intimate with your partner. Like just practice opening your heart, really loving as much as you can unconditionally and receiving the love, because most of us are not, let's be honest. So really, really dropping and just practicing love, which really, really opens your heart center.
To learn more from Alicia Davon, you can sign up for her and Erwan's course, Mastery of Relationship. She said it's for anybody who wants to have an even better love or sex life. Sign up or schedule a free love life consultation by texting their school at 415-308-9580 or fill out the form on their website, davonmethod.com. Magda Kay offers coaching for the practices she mentioned, tantric and breathwork and more. You can apply to book a free discovery call with her at magdakay.com/more. There you'll also find her courses, her book, and some free guides that you can download. If you're enjoying Girl Boner Radio, please take a few seconds to give it a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or send a link to your friends. Both of those things would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for listening.